Thanks, Dave. Hi, my name's Chris. This is Indigo.
Hi.
I'm from RMIT. My background's a mental health social worker, mental health lawyer. I have my own experience of mental ill health. Indigo is the Human Rights Advisor, Communications and Policy Manager for the Victorian Mental Illness Awareness Council.
Yeah, do stuff.
Do stuff, lots of stuff. And Indigo and I both sit on the VMIAC Human Rights Subcommittee. So we're here today to talk about physical health as a human rights issue. I think this is important for a few reasons, thank you. The process of examining the rights framework that we are engaging with when we're talking about physical health and people who use mental health services helps us to shed some of the preconceptions that we walk into the room with by examining it from a kind of hard, almost a legal perspective. It helps us to say, actually, no, that's not diagnostic overshadowing, that's unlawful discrimination. If we're treating people differently based on their diagnosis, that is unlawful discrimination. And taking a rights-based approach helps us it gives us permission, but it also gives you permission to use that language and to come from that perspective. And so that's why we've really been trying to push that, that agenda. And now it is. Hey. So you have all signed up to, they've given me so much technology I can't wave my props around. You've all signed up to this. This is the Equally Well Consensus Statement. If you haven't signed up, then you should, and your organisation's probably signed up for you, but definitely get on board with that. So in the consensus statement, mental health and wellbeing is a basic human right, often denied to many in our community, right? That's in there in the consensus statement. It's in your swags and with the very high quality drink bottles and the excellent swag bags. Have a read of it, because we're going to unpack exactly what we mean by that. When we say that people are having their rights violated, we really need to understand what that means. So people will be empowered by understanding their rights. So we heard yesterday that it's important to empower people so that they will feel empowered not to smoke, for example, rather than just harassing them not to smoke anymore. We know that that doesn't work. We have to get people into a space where they are within themselves feeling like they have the willpower to do it. This is how we do it. We empower people by making sure that their rights are not breached. We have to respect the rights of people living with mental illness. And this is not a one, I can pick this right, I'm going to respect that right, I'm going to respect the other. They are all tied in together. If we don't respect the rights of people who are using mental health services across the board, that means that when we want to respect another right, like their right to health, they're not going to trust us. They're not going to trust you. Yep. We need to always have this rights-based approach and this rights-based critique underpinning the work that we're doing. So action number one in the Equally Well Consensus Statement is to respect the rights of people living with mental illness. Now, I'm an academic at RMIT. I do a lot of talking to clinicians. I do a lot of talking to social work students and to law students. And I often hear the word rights, or I read the word rights, as it's a kind of a nebulous concept. And it's kind of in the this is a consensus statement because it was, reached by consensus. But the word rights is in there in this kind of nebulous way, but it has a really clear meaning. There is a very definite meaning of what we mean when we say rights, in particular in this space. So there's a couple of international United Nations treaty documents and conventions that we, as Australia, have signed. When we've signed that, we've committed everybody in Australia to comply with those. This is international law, so not complying with the rights that is in international law is unlawful, right? That's where we understand unlawful discrimination. We have in each of the states and territories and at the federal level as well, the Commonwealth level, we also have anti-discrimination law, which makes discrimination unlawful in various ways. So what are we talking about? So I could talk about this all day. I've only got less time than I started with.
But don't, because I got stuff too.
Indigo's got so much great stuff too. Okay, so we're going to look at the right to health in the CRPD. It's just one tiny little example of a right that's super relevant to the work we're doing here. So the right to health requires that health professionals, which is most of you, or a lot of you anyway, provide care of the same quality to persons with disabilities. The CRPD includes people, psychosocial, long-term psychosocial disability. And to be fair, if you're dying 20 years earlier because of your mental health condition, then you're being disabled by it. So you're caught up in with this convention. So we have here a room at Peter Mac.
Yep.
And we have here a psychiatric inpatient. Now, no one can walk into those spaces and tell me that they are of the same quality. Here's the website at Peter Mac. Now, I know what you're saying, Chris. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Chris, really? Hairdressing, manicure and massage is your ditch to die in? That's what you're going to say that we need to be doing in mental health services? Actually, yes, that is what I'm saying. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. If we are providing one set of services to people who are using cancer treatment and one set of services to people who are in our mental health services... Oh, right. Sorry. Performing for you guys. Just a shout out to everyone under your doonas watching the live stream. I think you've got the right idea curled up there. This is what's available in that space. And if we're not providing that to everybody, it's discrimination. If we can provide manicures and hairdressing in cancer wards, we can do that in mental health services as well. And if we are not, we are unlawfully discriminating against the people in those services. And we need to be using that language. We can talk about resource issues, happy to talk about resource issues, but when you deny somebody a level of service, please look them in the eyes and say, because of resource issues, I'm violating your human rights. Yep, that's the way we need to be thinking about engaging with rights, right? That's why this is so important, because it gives us this language, this strong and unashamed language for standing up for the rights of people who are using mental health services. Credit to Indigo for all this great animation, by the way. Free and informed consent. So this right is tied up. We can't be providing rights of the same quality unless it's free and informed, right? So there's two limbs of this. We should have named the owl. This is the human rights owl.
Oliver.
Oliver. Hi, Oliver. So consent is not consent unless it's free. No undue pressure, no threats, no compulsory treatment. Yep, this is bound up in this same right to health. You can't pull it apart. You can't say, well, I'm going to provide you manicures, but I'm also going to provide you with compulsory treatment. You can't split those up. You take one away, then you're unlawfully discriminating. The other side is informed consent. You have to explain the implications of the decision, including the pros and cons.
Absolutely. Over to me. And if that owl, if Oliver doesn't have both those wings, he's not flying. Really... I had to say that. So I just wanted to give a bit of an example from my own life about free and informed consent. And so the time when it's about halfway through my experiences of using services, I had about 9 years off and on of using inpatient services. The time when a psychiatrist said to me, Indigo, I want you to agree, thanks Chris, I want you to agree to get depots, injections of your antipsychotics in the community, or I will need to put you on a community treatment order. He violated my right to free consent because I was under threat. And I wish I had known back then about my rights, because I would have had greater protections, actually. I would have had the right to appeal if I had said, well, go on then, do it, try and put me on a treatment order. But I didn't know my rights or how to protect them. So that was not free consent. And so let's talk about informed consent. These are some pictures. I get a bit sad looking at these pictures. This was me pre-madness, pre-psychiatry. And before I entered the psychiatric system, I was a size 14. Hello. And when I was first prescribed antipsychotics, I know now, I didn't know at the time, that my psychiatrist lied to me by omission, because this is what I was told. This was the only thing I was told about the side effects of antipsychotics. you might gain a bit of weight. And I don't know about you, but gaining 50 kilograms in 1 year is not what I would call a bit. And I don't think there's a different definition or meaning of what a bit means in psychiatry versus with the rest of us. That's huge. So I stand here today. The last time I was weighed, I was over 130 kilograms. I think I carry it pretty well, but yeah, thank you. Fat pride, sisters and brothers. But this is not okay. This is not okay. I am in the high end of morbidly obese. I am twice the ideal weight for my height. I'm carrying an extra person around, and I feel blessed, bloody lucky that I haven't developed diabetes. But the fact of being this size carries a whole lot of disabling impacts that if you haven't been this size, you may not realise. It is really hard for me to sleep. It is really hard, actually, and painful to put my shoes on. Walking up and down stairs is really difficult. I can't kneel. If people say, let's sit down on the grass, I can't do that. That's not okay, yeah? The fact that we're not... Compulsory treatment is not okay, from my point of view. If I had the power, not that anyone's giving it to me anytime soon, I'd repeal the Mental Health Act, no questions. But we're not at that point. So at the very least, we need to be honest. It is not okay that I was told I'd gain a bit of weight, and so I had no chance to potentially protect myself from the weight gain and all those disabling impacts. Maybe I couldn't have changed it, but at least if I'd known, I could have tried. That's not okay. There is a really... I know this is uncomfortable. I know we don't like to talk about this, but if we're serious about physical health, we have to. And it is not okay that one group of people can make the decision about putting my life at risk or any other consumer's life at risk. Whether we live or die, whether we have risks to our life expectancy, that is absolutely a choice for an individual to make. I'm going to hand back to Chris now.
Thanks, Indigo. By the way, who put these minties up here? Like, what a track putting a bowl of minties up for the speakers just to get, lockjaw in the middle of the presentation. Thanks. But fool you, I didn't fall for it. Okay, so we need to raise awareness of the human rights. So this is from Article 25 of the CRPD. We need to raise awareness of human rights, dignity, autonomy and needs. That is something that is required to maintain the right to health. This is a fundamental part of the right to health. You can't be upholding the right to health. Oh, fine. If I wasn't so good looking, you wouldn't need to keep me in shot, would you?
Chris, you need to be compliant.
Oh, yes.
Don't be compliant.
I can't. Oh, okay, thanks. Okay. So, raising awareness of human rights, dignity and autonomy, we cannot engage with the issues that we have been talking about yesterday and that we'll keep talking about today unless we are supporting people in these spaces. There is no way that somebody is going to quit smoking if they don't feel like they have autonomy in their own life. There is no way they're going to go to the gym, they're going to engage with the other health professionals if they don't feel like they're getting dignity from the mental health services. So these are not, human rights is not something that you can bolt on, and they're not something that that's a kind of higher level of service. If you are doing mental health service provision and you are not maintaining human rights, if you're not upholding dignity, autonomy and meeting people's needs, you're actually not doing mental health. You're not going to be able to progress through the treatment that you've outlined. Things are not going to work. You're not going to know why because you're thinking, oh, I'm doing everything by the book. They're just not taking their medication. They're not taking their medication because you're not giving them a choice. And right now, I really want to walk out of the camera because Indigo is saying I have to be compliant and stay in the camera. I mean, it's just...
No. Stand over there.
Well, yes. Now I'm okay. So she's telling me to stand over there. I'm going to stand over here. We didn't even set that up. They're super important. We can't do mental health treatment, care, support unless we are coming from a rights-based approach.
Thank you. This is quite fun presenting with Chris about difficult truths. So a few years back when I started working at the Department of Health, am I in the right spot? 4 minutes? 40. That's what I heard, 40. Cool. 4. Shit. Okay. So a few years ago, when I was at the Department of Health, I went out for lunch with some colleagues and they were talking about their super, which was a bit boring to me because I lost a lot of my working years, so my super's not very exciting. And then they were talking about retirement and the sorts of things they plan to do. And it wasn't until that conversation, because I was feeling really uncomfortable, that I realised that people like me don't get to think about retirement, because I realised in that conversation that I don't actually expect to live to 65 or 70 or 72 or whatever the age is when we're allowed to stop working now. And that was quite shocking for me at that moment. It's something I've reflected on a lot. But I know the statistics. I know the risks for someone like me who's had years and years of antipsychotics, who lives with this weight and all the health conditions associated with that. And a lot of that is related to the effects of the treatment that I was given. That's not okay. That's not okay that the people that you work with don't get to think about retirement. How is that helpful for mental health or human rights? This is Rufus May, who's, if you don't know about Rufus May, please look him up on the internet. He's a bloody legend. You need to see beyond the psychiatric labels that you give to us and see us as a human being with all of the rights and all of the choices that other people have. Diagnostic shadowing, as we said, is a useful term, but the more important term is discrimination. I know that there's often a belief that compulsory treatment is done in our best interests, but if you're going to understand human rights, you need to understand that the concept of best interests is old, worn out, and really not relevant anymore. If you're thinking about human rights, you need to accept that actually you don't know what's in our best interests. And you need to replace that with the concept of will and preferences. If you're working in a rights-based service, what matters is the will and preferences of the person sitting or standing in front of you, not what you think is best for us. And if you think that actually you do know what's best for consumers, I'd ask you to look at other areas of health, because I don't see an internationally organised and growing orthopaedic surgery survivors movement. But do you? Or have I missed that? No. But the consumer psychiatric survivor movement has been growing for decades, and it's in a period of renewal at the moment. We're flooding into not just services, but academic institutions, into policy spaces. And you know when you'll know that you got our human rights right? When we stop doing this. That's your best outcome measure. When we decide, actually, we don't need to do this anymore, and we sod off, and while we're still doing this, you've got more work to do. Shall I just do this one? We need to finish, really. So I'll do this super speedy. So too often as well, people misunderstand what's meant by capacity. People confuse it with insight. It's not okay. I mean, insight is a whole lecture in itself, and it's an appalling concept, actually. It just means that we don't agree with you, and actually we're allowed to not agree with you, and we're also allowed to be weird. But if you think that someone lacks the capacity to make their own decisions, the answer is not coercion to make decisions on our behalf. The answer is supported decision-making, yeah? It's finding what is that ladder that we need to be able to make our own decisions. And your job is to support us to do that, not to substitute your own decision-making for ours. So we've got a flyer here, which has been produced by a group of local consumers out on the info table in the foyer. If you want to learn more about supported decision-making, please pick one up. We're not going to have time to go through all the next slides, so should we just do a super quick summary, do you think?
I might throw to Wanda's workshop a spoonful of sugar this afternoon. She's going to talk through supported decision-making there in an experiential way. So you'll, if you haven't had the experience of being prescribed medication that's going to be harmful for your health, I recommend you go to that, and she'll walk you through that process then.
Fantastic, cool. And the key point that we're going to make in this section is that supported decision-making is our reasonable adjustment. It's the thing that gives us equality with others for making decisions. There's lots of ways you can do it. And I think we just want to say, because I think we've said it already, but I want to say again, it is not a benign act when you take away someone's rights. It is a harmful act, so we need to stop it. We'll finish on that, shall we?
Thanks, Indy.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Morning, everybody. My name's Jenny Bowman. I'm just stepping in very briefly in place of Dave, who's the chair this morning, because Dave is wearing multiple hats. I'd really like everyone to join me again, please, to thank Chris and Indigo. It is such a powerful message. We are a little short of time, but I'd still like to see if anyone has one or two really burning questions for Chris or Indigo that you would like to ask. And we have some mics around, so if you could put your hand up and wave frantically, that would be great.
We've scared them off.
We do have time.
Tell them not to ask any questions. That'll tell them not to ask questions. That'll get them going. You're not allowed to ask any questions.
Sorry, was there a question? Someone was pointing. No? All right, so in the interest of time, we will roll on, but thank you very, very much.